gonna make this thing official. So no cursing. We're recording. Who knows how many hundreds and thousands of people are going to watch this recording on YouTube once I post it live. So you just got to be don't say anything that could get you into trouble. All right, let's get it going. We are on Wine 101 Module 2. For Stacy and Artie, we're going to kind of briefly recap Module 1. So you're in luck there. You'll get a little preview from when Cornerstone starts working for you. All right, remember, you guys need to interrupt me as much as possible. We are having a conversation about wine. Here we are on session 2. Here were your last suppers, and I use these to break you guys up into teams, right? Because we're going to be, I'm pitting you against each other to try to win a prize. Here's what I came up with. And I think because Cody's no longer with us, I might move somebody around. So we've got Sauvignon squad. These were all Cabernet Sauvignon crews, right? That'll be Will, Mike, and Turner. You guys are now comrades in arms. We've got Bold Town, Josh, Artie, and Bill. I put you there, even though I know Pinot Noir is not the boldest. But I think I'm going to move you over to Who Needs Wine. So it'll be you and Stacy. How's that sound?
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, you're right. All right, cool. Yeah, whatever. Cody is now dead to us until July when he comes back for this class. So I think that's what we're going to do here. And you're thinking, well, how do I get points? Well, we're going to do some Kahoot quizzes. Is anybody familiar with Kahoot?
Yes.
Oh, yes. If anyone's been in high school in the last 10 years or college, you probably are familiar with Kahoot. To me, this thing, I'd never heard of it until I started teaching, and it blew my mind. I'm like, that's cool. We can have people it can be interactive. Also, if I ask you a question in class and you respond correctly, or if you really just engage with the class, you get a point often. And sometimes it's just a professor's choice. So, Bill, congratulations. I just gave you a point for no reason. So now Who Needs Wine is ahead right now with 1 point. If we were to end the class today, you guys would win whatever bottle of wine you want in our portfolio.
What I'm talking about, Bill.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, I lied. I said whatever bottle. I meant you'll get a bottle of wine based on your team's wine family, which didn't really happen. So you guys would get like an IPA, right? No, we will figure something out. And it'll be good. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Know your team, take a bullet for, do anything. You got to do what you got to take one for your team, right? You got to be there for them. All right, we're going to do a Kahoot quiz. Oh, let me go ahead and kill this.
So, don't we need to get on that on our end?
Yeah, so the way it works, I'll tell you in a second. Move this over here and I'll show you. Of course, my computer's being slow as hell. Oh, all right, well, there kind of is. Okay, so what we're going to do here, don't look at those questions, pretend that I didn't just accidentally show them to you. Yeah, so Kahoot is like a kind of interactive quiz type of thing. And what you're going to do is you're going to use your phone. I don't know if Josh is going to be able to do it because you're logged in with us, but you're going to use your phone as a remote control. So what you'll do, wow, my computer's going really slow, guys. I apologize. You are going to scan this QR code with your phone, or you'll go to kahoot.it, not .com, kahoot.it, and put in 7760557. Enter a nickname, and then it's like we'll have a little quiz, right? A little quiz show, and you'll see, you kind of see them like kind of grayed out here, that the red, blue, kind of yellowish, and green. Those will be your 4 answer options, and you'll use your phone like a remote control and answer it that way.
If I'm logged into this call on my phone, do I need to switch?
You would need, yeah, you need to do Kahoot on something else. You can't do Kahoot and Zoom at the same time, I don't think.
Okay, well,
reading out the questions and stuff.
So you said kahoot.id /
.it. Yeah. It's just kahoot.it, and it'll ask you for a game pen, and you'll put in, and you can do it on your iPad if you have an iPad too.
Well,
yeah,
I had
let me grab something real quick.
I wanted to do this meeting on my MacBook, but since I have the invitation through my United email, I wasn't sure how to log into that on my Mac. So
You want
anyway,
me to give you the invitation in the chat? No, that wouldn't help, would it?
I'll be right
um, I mean,
Yeah, we can have a second. Do you want me to send it to a different email address or something?
if you could send it to my Yahoo, that would be great because I know that's connected to my Mac, but I haven't gone through setting up my United email on my personal computer just because I only use it on my phone.
Yeah, I'll
But-
do the web app for my MacBook. There's like a little web where you don't have to install Outlook.
Mhm.
You can do it like through Chrome or whatever.
Let's see. I think I have Outlook on here.
Actually, don't know where the link is.
Let me see.
But choose some participants. Copy invitation. All right, I've got the invitation copied.
Do you need that email address?
Yeah, I'm logging in my Gmail. 1 second.
Kitty cat, DJ. Well, you know. It's perfect. Pancakes.
Computer only goes slow if I'm hosting a class. Okay, what's your email address?
So it's my first and last name, Stacy Grimshaw, all lowercase, 11 at yahoo.com.
All right, I just sent that. I'm all in here real quick. Get rid of this. All right, let's give it. We got 4 people in. And Stacy, this one's all based on module 1, so I don't even know. Let's see if we can get you in there real quick. Who are we missing on here? We don't have.
I'm about to get them now.
Okay, cool.
Recording in progress.
Thanks for y'all's patience. I want to get everyone in.
Josh, do we have a nickname? We're just gonna. I don't remember the.
We are bold, so fortune favors the bold, I guess. I don't know.
So I see and hear you guys. Can y'all see and hear me?
I can hear you. We can't see you.
Okay, let me see. Start video. There we go. Great.
WB.
Okay, so for Kahoot, let me get it up on here.
So bold is Artie, is that right?
Yes.
You are the bird, the snowbird.
Yeah. Earmuffs.
The bird nerd.
Okay, I see it there. Okay.
Will, are
Cool.
you joining us?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know how I got logged out here.
Oh yeah, sometimes if your phone blanks out, it'll.
So what is the nickname of the group for Bill and I? I'm sorry.
Oh, you just put in your name.
Just put my name. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay,
Nah.
I think we got everyone now, right? I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna go. You can still join in if you're like. All right, I think we have, what is it? 6 questions, nothing too crazy. Who's the largest consumer of wine in the world? France, Italy, USA, or my wife, Jessica?
No.
Okay, yes, it's USA, the largest consumer, right? Not producer. Although I would have accepted D as well. All right. Oh, by the way, you get extra points for speed, right?
Right. You do it first, you get more points. Yeah.
Exactly. Mike knows that very well. Question 2, true or false, the color of wine is determined by the pulp of the grape. Is that true or false? That is false, right? The pulp of almost every wine is basically clear. We'll talk about that a little bit later today. Question 3, what percentage of water is in an average bottle of wine? 64, 74, 84, 94? Turner's dropping the mic. That would be 84, right? All right, Mike on a hot streak, but Turner's right behind, and so is Bill. Question 4, what's the most important decision a winemaker has? It's a little subjective, but how to prevent hail, pruning, pest control, or when to harvest the wine? Oh, nice. 7 for 7, yes, when to harvest. All right, couple more here. Question 5, crush or press wine that is ready for fermentation is called what? Cuvée, the must, the crush, or the mash? All right, it's the must. Mash is when we're talking whiskey, right? We will cover all of that though. Ooh, whoa, look at this. A razor,
I'm coming.
razor thin lead there. Bill's on hot streak too. Last question. True or false, American oak is tighter grained than French?
Oh.
Oh, snap.
Tough one.
Yeah, it would have been useful to be able to do Cornerstone.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we didn't get to do it yet. I read the pamphlet, but that's
Well, did you
about
get it? Did you get it right?
I didn't answer it. I don't have a clue. I just guessed.
There you go. So in third place with 3 points, we've got Bill. Well done. And then we got 7 points for Mike going to your team, and then 10 points to the Turner, the pancake man, Turner.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all hold up because I'm going to take a photo
Let's
because I will forget. If not, we'll screenshot it, but I want to get you guys in the screenshot. So hold on, let me put you like this. We'll put you up here. How about that? And then let me go down here. Come on. We will be getting out of here at 10:30 just based on how slow my computer is being.
Yeah, I need to hook you up.
I know. What's going on with that? Okay, smile. Too late now.
Oh, nice.
That's not our best work, but you know what? We've got 5 more tries throughout this process. At least 3 more. Okay, save that guy there. All right, so now we all understand Kahoot, right?
Yes.
Congratulations to our winners. What's going on here? Oh, leave. That's what it was. You guys were covering it. All right, let's get back into it here. Move you guys over here. And back into class. All right. So we're gonna do a quick recap. This is more like if you guys won't have any questions about module 1, you want to ask, please stop me and ask. We're going to do that real quick. We'll talk about closures, everyone's the most popular subject in the wine world, closures. But then we'll go into the cool stuff with sparkling wine, white wine, and rosé, and then factors that affect the cost. Then we'll talk about next steps. Okay, so in module 1, we learned what wine is, right? Which just means it's fermented fruit juice, right? It could be from anything, but we normally will talk about grape wines. The best grapes just have the best proportion of that water to acid to flavor compounds that make them perfect for wine, right? All right. What's in a bottle? A regular 750 milliliter bottle contains about 2.8 pounds of grapes, 520 grapes, 800 calories. But the really viscous dessert wines will be more than that. So we said 84% water, and that makes sense, right? Let's say you have a 14 or 13% ABV wine. That's a good percentage of it. And really 2%, 2 to 3% are all the other flavor compounds, right? Tannins, phenols, et cetera, et cetera. And then what's in a grape inside most wine grapes, that's clear, right? The color comes from maceration. That is the time spent with the skins, right? We call that maceration. So with red wines, we're going to macerate for a long time, right? Because we want a lot of color. And white wines, not so much or at all. Okay. And then we talked kind of a bird's eye view of how wine is made. We harvest, right? We crush, we ferment, we age, we fine or filter if we want, and then we bottle. Are there any questions about these concepts? Anything from the module?
Hey, the only thing I got is it says in the walkthrough that United States is fourth largest producer, but then in the questions, when I answered it, it said America's the third largest. So I got that answer wrong because I didn't want to choose third largest.
Yeah, that is a good catch. That is an annoying change we need to make. We know.
I had the same issue.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So if you scored an 88% or whatever, you actually got 100. So congratulations. But yeah, we will thanks for pointing that out. We're working on fixing that. I'm not the greatest with technology, as you guys will find out. So I'm reliant on Bobby Deason. Bobby, help me. Any other questions about the module? Cool. Let's then move on to module 2. All right, we're going to talk about serving and storing, and we'll talk about some white wine styles. So what is a closure, right? The object used to seal a bottle. Now, before we had corks, we were using oily rags, right? Corks became a slightly better option than an oily rag. That just sounds dangerous, right? So other closures we use are screw caps, synthetic closures, and glass closures, right? Let's get into cork. So it's harvested from the bark of the cork oak. You can see right there. It's impermeable and elastic, which means you can allow little bits of oxygen through. For a point, would anyone want to tell me why might we want to let a little bit of oxygen through?
Doesn't it like enhance the flavor when the oxygen touches the wine or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely changes the flavor. That's a point for Artie. So oxidation can add some really interesting flavors to wine, right? And another big thing it can do is it can soften the tannins. If you have a really big, bold, tannic wine, the one that dries your mouth out, right?
Mhm.
Oxygen will eventually change the structure of those phenols, the tannins, to make it softer. So that's why we like cork, letting a tiny little bit of oxygen through, right? The elastic helps for fitting it in the bottle, then it takes the shape of the bottle, right?
Mhm. So the more tannin, the darker and the richer, right?
It's not necessarily darker, but richer is I think bolder is the word, and mouth drying, right?
Sorry.
Sometimes it can just feel richer or bolder if you macerate for longer.
Okay.
Right. The color is more based on the grape. Some grapes are darker than others. Like Cabernet Sauvignon, for instance, is a really darker colored skin than a Pinot Noir grape, which is a little more red. So that'll be a lot of the color. But yeah, basically.
Does oxygen have anything to do with the color or just the flavor?
It will when you age it for long enough. So if you ever have a really old wine, if you have a young wine, it can look kind of purple, right? Like let's say you have a new Malbec or a brand new Cabernet, it can look really dark and kind of purplish, perhaps. And let's say you have a Cabernet that's 20 years old, it'll look a little bit brownish. They call it tawny, and that's oxygen That's the role oxygen plays on aging of wine.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of like, you leave an apple out in the air and it turns brown.
Right.
That's oxidation, right? That same type of thing kind of happens it takes a lot longer, but it'll happen to anything. It'll happen to us all. We're all oxidizing right now as we speak.
That's right.
This is a big process, by the way, harvesting and growing cork oak. You got to wait. Like, let's say Turner and I decide we want to start a cork company. We're not going to harvest our first tree for another 30 years. So hopefully we've got some cool investors that will keep us afloat for 25 to 30 years. It's pretty nuts. And then you got to wait another 9 to 13 years to harvest again. Pretty crazy. Does anyone just happen to know what country produces the most cork oak?
Oh, that was something.
Is it Portugal?
Yeah.
Portugal or somewhere.
Yeah.
Well done. That's a point for Turner.
Oh,
Spain also grows a bunch of cork oak.
yeah.
Go figure. Now, can anyone name a disadvantage? Have you heard of anything bad that happens from cork?
Cork can
Isn't there a mold?
disintegrate and fall into the wine.
Yep, that's one. I'll give you a point for
There
that.
a mold of some kind.
Yeah, Mike, that is TCA, right? Have you ever heard of a corked wine? That'll happen. At least when I first started, they said 6% of wines were corked, which is crazy. So this is a mold. It's harmless, but it makes things taste like, I always say it smells like whitewater, like a water ride. You guys ever been to whitewater? That's what it always smells like to me. Some people say like an old moldy basement, etc. Always smells like or the Six Flags, one of the water rides, right? Any questions on cork? Still the most popular, if you're going to sell or something, let it age for 20 years, 5 years, 10 years. Cork is a really good option. Synthetic cork, I'm not a fan of these. It's made from plastic compounds. Basically, there's no risk of TCA. TCA is the name of the cork mold, right? But it's annoying. You still need a screwdriver. But people like it because with wine, people want the ceremony of opening a bottle, right? So that's where this comes through. No risk of TCA, but you can still get some oxidation. You don't want too much oxidation. It can make that apple turn brown too quickly, right? I'm much more of a fan of the old Stelvin, right? Which is the screw cap. It's aluminum. Australia and New Zealand almost exclusively use the Stelvin enclosure, even in their really nice, their $100 wines, they'll still use Stelvin. And it's kind of interesting too, because now a lot of those Australian and New Zealand wines, they've got some that are 30 years old or whatnot, or 50 years old. They've been cellaring with the Stelvin caps. And they found it's actually almost more interesting because they don't have as much oxygen come through. So the wines they cellar differently than a cork that's letting a little bit of wine through, right? And some of them say that it's preferable. It's more interesting. It ages slower. So there's that. I'm a big fan of the Stelvin. I wish most wines came in Stelvin unless you were going to put them in a cellar, right? We don't need to deal with all that cork. That's just one man's opinion. It can aid in wine's overall quality, especially I'm talking, like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is perfect. Something fresh, any Sauvignon Blanc almost. White wines, we don't need a cork in there, right? You want to keep it as fresh as possible, as little oxygen as possible. I'm all for it. That's the end of my TED Talk on Stelvin enclosures. Now we got our glass enclosure. Are you guys familiar with the Côte de Roses enclosure here? It's classy. It's beautiful. It's hard to open a little bit, but it's worth it though, because you also get no TCA, right? No chance of cork, and it looks cool.
So does the glass enclosure, does it twist the way a Stelvin would, or does it kind of pop in the way a cork would? I haven't had Gerard Bertrand yet.
It's
I haven't opened one of those.
It's kind of in between. It twists, but it's much harder to twist than a regular Stelvin. It's got that little plastic thing around it first. You got to take this little plastic kind of sealant thing off of it, and then it's just kind of a hard one. What do you guys say? It's just harder to twist off. It's like really, it's kind of jammed in there. It's got a little, yeah, see that little plug. So that plug and it kind of gets wedged in there.
I take a little butter knife and stick in there and get it started, pry it up a little bit to get it started, and then it comes right out.
You're saying use a corkscrew and kind of pry it?
Now I use a butter knife and just kind of go in between and then just rotate it a little bit. And that gets it up enough that you can get your fingers under it. That's the hard part about getting it off, is getting your fingers under it.
Right. Thanks for the Bill. You get a point for the pro tip there. Old butter knife trick. I like it. Yeah, I think it's still worth it though because it looks cool. That's just me. Okay, let's talk about what's in the bottle. All right, we've got 25.3 ounces in a 750 milliliter. So let's say if you're serving, let's see, what is it? Let's say you got 5 dinner guests, right? Then you can pour them all about a 5-ounce pour, right? Josh, I saw that. That was a point. He said 5. Yeah, if you got 6, then pour a little bit lower, right? Give everyone a 4-ounce pour, that type of thing, right? A typical red wine glass can hold up to a bottle, really, for the big red wine glasses. But that space is not for the whole bottle unless you're my wife, Jessica, who will fill it up to the top. I'm just, she's not here to defend herself. This is not cool. And then, of course, when you're pouring, you're going to want to hold it with the label out so that the guests can see, or if you're ever tasting a buyer on it, right? Okay. And then it lets us know that, by the way, if you hold it by the bowl, it'll warm it up. You might want to do that every once in a while if the white wine's too cold. We'll get into that here in a bit. People can really nerd out about wine glasses, especially the company Riedel. Has anyone heard of Riedel? It's an Austrian company. Yeah, so they have
Sold them at Total Wine.
Say it again.
We sold them at Total Wine, a lot of that stuff.
Oh yeah, they're really cool. That's we've got the regular like Riedel. This is it. This is like the unisex Riedel glass. It's supposed to be for anything. It's pretty cool. That's what we almost exclusively use at our house. But we do have a couple like Cabernet ones, which are bigger, and then the Burgundy ones have the outward lip. I don't know what you call it. But this company makes one for every single varietal, right? They say Zinfandel should, be shaped this way, and it's all about how the aromatics of each grape would hit your nose, right? So Pinot Noir, they tend to be, what are they, tuliped, I guess, that's the word I'm looking for, tuliped. And that will, because Pinot Noir has kind of some delicate aromatics that they're trying to enhance by the glass shape, right? The bowl shape, and trying to get that to your nose first, right? So yeah, there's a science behind a lot of it. The biggest difference would be, all right, put it in a solo cup and then put one in a proper wine glass and do that tasting side by side and see what you think. Because there is at least a difference in just having a bowl versus like a solo cup, right? Or a styrofoam cup. White wine glasses. Have you ever noticed that white wine glasses and red wine glasses are a little bit different, right? They tend to be smaller in the bowl. And that is to preserve floral aromas. White wines tend to have a lot more floral aromas, right? Now, red wine glasses are usually larger bowl. Does anyone want to take a guess why that is?
Because you want to be able to get more of the aroma in the wider, it lets more air in or something.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's the point for you, Stacy. Yeah, aeration, right? So you sometimes want to let the red wines breathe a little bit more. They've got tannins, they've got other things. They're sometimes bolder. So you might want to aerate them and get that oxygen to that wine quicker so it aerates quickly and more aromas are released.
Is that why people swirl whenever they're tasting to let some air in
100%.
there?
They do it with white wine too, because just anytime the interplay of oxygen and wine will release a lot of those aromatics, right? And so and we don't do that really with spirits or or with beer because it's carbonated, but spirits, there's just too much. The alcohol is so high in spirits, it's 30%, 40%, that it pushes those aromatics out anyway. It doesn't need it. So wine's the perfect, that, 10 to 15%, where you could really use a swirl. You don't swirl champagne usually because the carbonation will push everything up anyway. But still, red or white wine we swirl. The sparkling wine glass you'll see is this kind of thin boy here, right?
Mm.
And it keeps the bubbles when it's more narrow. Don't ask me why, but it does it. And then dessert wine glasses, usually a small glass, mainly because you're usually only serving 2 or 3 ounces, right? No one wants, I mean, you might want 6 ounces of a dessert wine. Good luck with the type 2 diabetes you will develop with that habit after a while. But also at a restaurant to limit the portion, right? Okay, any questions there? None of these are hard rules. You can do whatever you want. Like we usually just put bubbles at our house in a regular glass because I want to drink more than 3 or 4 ounces. Still want a normal amount of wine. This is the biggest slide. This is one of the biggest takeaways for today. And it's on the next slide. We'll talk about the 30-30 rule. This is really interesting tasting though, right? Or if you ever want to try this one, get a room temperature, call it a Cabernet or a Boulder red, right? Put one in the fridge for 20 minutes. And the other one you can try to heat up somehow. How you do that is up to you. You could even microwave it, or if you just leave it in the sun for a while, and it's kind of a weird tasting, but taste them side by side, because red wine, especially a bigger, bolder red wine above 72 degrees Fahrenheit will taste hot as hell. It really emphasizes the alcohol. It's not going to be a fun experience, right?
Hot like spicy?
Say it again.
Hot like spicy? Like, what do you mean hot?
Hot like alcohol hot, like the burn in the back of your throat.
Oh, okay.
Like the bourbon burn, like a spirit burn. It'll taste like that.
Okay.
And it's not a pleasant experience. So really, you always want to get your red wines as close to cellar temperature as possible. We'll talk about that in a second. But that's an interesting tasting if you ever want to do. Now with white wine, you can have that too cold. And it could be a useful trick if you have something that you don't really want to show, like if you had to show something. Let's put it this way. When you go to a bar, if you were to order a shot of their well vodka, how would they serve it to you?
On
Probably
the
gonna
rocks.
chill it.
Yeah, ice as cold as possible, right?
Probably gonna chill it for you.
Yeah,
Dulls
they're gonna
the
chill
flavor.
it. Yeah, because the well vodka does not taste good, right? If you're trying to cover up aromatics, get something too cold, right? We have some
That's
of
why
our,
they give you frosted glass and beer too, right?
yeah, exactly. So you don't have to feel the pain of whatever beer they're serving. So the colder it is, the less you're going to taste, which is a good trick. If your wine is too cold, then you can do that bowl trick, right? Warm it up with your hands. Okay. Yeah, there it is. A wine above 70 degrees will start to smell and taste more alcoholic because of increased ethanol evaporation. There's the science behind it. Now, this is my big thing. Presenting wine. I don't know what happened to these I don't know what LSEP, that used to be an image. Something happened. We'll have to fix that. But the biggest thing that I hope you take away from this class in a way is the 30-30 rule. Because this changed wine for me forever. So I put my reds in the fridge at least 30 minutes before I drink them, normally, if I've got the time, right? Because room temperature is 72 degrees. You put it in the fridge for about 30 minutes, it's going to get closer to that 55 degrees cellar temperature. It is night and day. Tastes, to me, so much better when it's closer to that cellar temperature of 55 degrees. It just tastes fresher. It's better on the palate. That's my opinion. I want you to try it, though. Because I don't know. So for
Does
2
that
weeks
taste
now,
for any red?
any red, yep. To me, any wine tastes best at that cellar temperature, even the whites, because they can be a little warmer than normal. Maybe a little cooler than 55. So what I do sometimes too, if we're like taking something out, we know people are coming over, we'll take our whites out 20 or 30 minutes before. So they warm up a little bit from the fridge, right?
Mhm.
So they're closer to 50 degrees. And that's when you can really get the aromatics from the white wines. So especially when I was presenting a bunch, going around tasting 8 customers a day or whatever, I'd always put my reds. Sometimes I'd leave them in the fridge overnight and then put them on the side of the bag where they can kind of warm up, no ice packs on them. And then, rearrange the ice packs throughout the day. But all that to say, try it. And I want you guys to try it over the next 2 weeks if you can, and let me know what you think. And also maybe do a 30-30 on the red wines we're going to try before, maybe 2 weeks from now, when you wake up, stick them in there for 30 minutes, and then we'll taste them and see how they, with a little bit of a little chill on them. Now, the only exception is sparkling wines. You want to get sparkling wines as cold as possible. Here's a little chart. We're not going to go through all of it, but the coldest champagne, well, you're not going to cover anything up. You don't have to worry about that. The biggest thing too is when sparkling wines get a little warm, they get super carbonated, right? And that's a big problem. So we don't want everything exploding everywhere, right? Rieslings, Moscatos can be very cold as well. When we get over here to Pinot Grigio, Sauvignon Blanc, and dry Riesling, you guys can see the scale here. Chardonnay, see 50 to 55, that's almost 55 is supposed to be cellar temperature, right? So you can drink your Chardonnay at the same temperature as your light reds like Barbera or Beaujolais. But I like it all right around 55. Any questions on that? By the way, these are not hard rules. Everyone, pretentious people like to think that there's all these hard rules. You can drink it out of solo cup. It doesn't matter, but there's a general consensus on something.
I guess a preference thing, but I'm sure there is, like you said, some science behind the temperatures and trying things different ways so you can actually get more of the flavor.
Exactly. And like the science is the ethanol, if it's too warm, it's going to taste hotter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people like that. That's it. It's all good.
I got a random question on that last slide.
Sure.
What is European room temperature?
Probably a little warmer.
Say that. Oh, so European room temperature. I haven't really noticed that. I guess I gotcha. Yeah. So a lot of times they don't use air conditioning in Europe.
They keep their houses colder.
Like central heat and air the way we do here.
Yeah, like 72 is very much, I guess, is an American thing. And yeah, like often if you go to Europe, it'll be a lot colder, or they will have heaters or whatever, but it's set to 66 or whatever.
Man, that's awesome.
I want my house to be that temperature.
Yeah,
that's great if it were like that in Georgia.
Yeah, exactly. My wife and I are always fighting over that thermostat. She's always like sneaking by and turning it up to 70, because in her world, it would be 76 would be just room temperature. And in my world, 68 is where I would thrive. That's when I open up and I become most aromatic, right?
Amen, brother. Amen.
You want to put a little chill on me. Let's talk about proper storage. Does any of you guys have a bottle you're hanging on to?
I have a few.
Cool. So here are a couple rules for that. And if anyone else wants to start cellaring stuff, there are a couple rules. Once again, these are subjective, but this is a lot of it's science too. So, but you can do it however you want. But keeping it cool, there's a reason cellar temperature is 55, is that it's the most stabilizing for wines, right? Heat will speed up oxidation and all sorts of things. Consistency is really important too. Going big temperature changes over a long period of time is not good. Avoid light. Humidity is better. And that's because corks can dry out, right? And when a cork dries out, oxygen can come through. Now, why do people lay their wine down? Here's a possibility for a point. Why would we lay them down?
To keep the cork moist with the wine.
Yes. Kind of ties in with what we were just saying, right? That we want to make sure that cork doesn't dry out and we have wine on it. It's less likely to dry out. When that cork dries out, there's little bitty cracks, and then oxygen comes in, and then it oxidizes too quickly. And I don't know why this needs to be said, but don't shake it. It's like a baby. Don't shake the baby. They have to put that on like that warning label on a lot of things. You're like, who's doing that? Okay, any questions there?
Who got the point? Because I think we kind of said it at the same time.
I put it down as for Mike, but Artie, I will give you a point as well.
Yeah, Artie, speak up for your point.
Yeah, I didn't see you say it, so but I'm just taking. We're on the honor system here.
I kind of like interrupted you because I could hear him about to say it. So
Maybe I'll give you a 0.5. No, I'll give you a full point. I'll give you a full point.
thank you.
All right, let's talk about types of wines. This is what we're going to be mainly doing for the rest of these sessions, is going through the different types, right? Sparkling, white, rosé, red, and dessert. So let's start. Today we're going to be doing sparkling, white, and rosé. We don't have a rosé to taste, but I'm going to implore you to drink a lot of rosé wine in the next 2 weeks. So we'll know what we're talking about. Here's a Wikipedia definition. I want to remove this slide because it's not helpful. This is a good slide here. So we can touch on this in module 1, right? The basics of winemaking. There's sugar and grapes, right? We have our crush, and then we start fermentation, we add our yeast, and the byproduct of that fermentation is alcohol and CO2, right? Has anyone been to a winery? Josh has.
Yes.
Bill has. I know you've been to a bunch.
For like a wine tasting. I don't think I've been given an education on how it's made.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I didn't get all this when I went.
Cool. Well, the one thing you might have noticed if you saw them, any of the still wines in the back, right, when they're making it, they ferment, they add the yeast, and then you'll see the big vats will bubble, right? That's when fermentation is happening. They're creating alcohol, and another byproduct is CO2. And when they're making still wine, that CO2, that's why things bubble. Like if you ever see them making beer, it'll bubble. All that CO2 leaves, just goes into the air, right? What we're trying to do with sparkling wine production is capture those bubbles, right? So there's several ways of doing that. There's bottle fermentation. We're going to go through all of this in a minute. This is when you create a wine and then a base wine like normal, and then you have a second fermentation in the bottle, and we'll talk about that. And then there's one we do the same thing in a tank, right? So hang with me here for a second while we talk about it. So bottle fermentation, this is called traditional method. It's called méthode champenoise. It's the champagne method, right? This is how they do it in Champagne. They do it, a lot of places will make it in this style of making basically sparkling wine in the bottle. And y'all stop me because it's all kind of complicated. But what we're going to do here, we're going to start with a base wine. So we make a wine like normal, right? You know, a lot of champagne's made with either Chardonnay or Pinot Noir. So let's just say we make a Chardonnay. And usually that base wine, we want it to be lower alcohol and higher acid, right? So we'll harvest the grapes. Usually it's made in a cooler climate, so they're already going to be lower sugar. So let's say we harvest the grapes and we turn it into wine and it's about 9% alcohol, right? Now we got a perfect base wine for champagne. We're going to put that base wine in a bottle, right? A champagne bottle. And then we're going to add a little bit of sugar and a little bit of yeast into the bottle. Now, what does that do?
Sugar, it's not just the sugar from the grapes.
Nope, it's like table sugar.
Okay.
Any sugar can be fermented anyway. The yeast likes the really basic sugars too. Okay. So you add a little bit of that in, and then you cap it with like a Coke cap, like a crown cap. And so that little bit of yeast has a little bit of sugar to eat, right? Like little Pac-Mans. It's eating that sugar and it's creating a little more alcohol and a little bit of CO2, right? And that CO2 has nowhere to go because it's in that bottle, and it dissolves into that wine, right? So
Right.
now you've got bubbles with the crown cap. That's the second fermentation that happens in the bottle. Now we talk about this thing we call autolysis, yeast autolysis, that's aging on the lees. Because what happens is that yeast eats all that sugar and then it dies. There's nothing else to eat. So that yeast dies. We call that lees. If you've ever had a wine that tastes kind of like doughy or biscuity, that's dead yeast cells. That's why champagne will taste that way sometimes too, because we actually like, a lot of people love that flavor. So what you see this guy doing over here, he's riddling, right? He is trying to have those dead yeast cells collect at the bottom of the bottle. So he turns the bottle upside down, and all those dead yeast will eventually just kind of hang out down here. Does that make sense? So you're getting some of that yeast flavor into the bottle, but it's all hanging out down here. And the reason we do that is because when it's time, when we're ready to actually cork the thing, we're going to freeze this part of the bottle. We're going to do a quick, forgot what type of freezing is, like a flash freeze of the liquid right here. So it's basically all those dead yeast cells, we freeze them into like a little yeast cube. And then we disgorge them, which means we turn the bottle over, the pressure pops that little yeast cube out. It's pretty crazy. All right, and now we've got our wine, our sparkling wine with, it's probably filled up to about right here. There's not quite enough wine, right, to sell it. So we add the dosage, which is like a little bit of reserve of wine that we put back in here to fill it back up to a reasonable level, right? And this is also, and I'm coming at you guys with a lot, so stop me. But this is also when you determine your sweetness level with champagne. Because so it'll ferment dry, and then you flip it, pop the lees, ice cube out, and you fill it up. But you can make that's table wine. You can make it really sweet. So now your sparkling wine is sweet, or you can make it just bone dry, put bone dry wine in there, and then the sparkling wine is bone dry. This is where you decide how sweet or dry you want your wine. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
We could teach a 10-week class on just the traditional method. It's really complicated, but it's pretty cool. It's cool to see. And then, oh yeah, there's our yeast buddy. He'll die, and we gotta pop him out of there. All right, let's see. Any questions on that? That's the most expensive way to make sparkling wine. That's why champagne is expensive. A cheaper way to do it, and not necessarily, there's nothing wrong with it, it's a great way to make wine, is the tank method. This one's most associated with Prosecco, right? A bunch of different, we use this method all over the world. We use the traditional method too, the champagne method all over the world. Tank method is just a different way of doing it. And it's kind of similar. So you start with a dry base wine. Same thing we do in champagne. You start with something that's like 9%, 10%, right? And instead of doing it in the bottle, you're going to do your second fermentation in a big old tank. Way less hard, less expensive than doing it in each bottle, right? So you put your dry base wine, and then in the seal pressure tank, you then add another dollop of yeast and sugar, right? Seal it. And that second fermentation is happening here. And one thing I think I forgot to mention, you're adding CO2, but you're also adding more alcohol, right? Same thing in champagne method. Because it starts at 9% ABV, 10%. When you add a little more yeast and sugar, you're creating more alcohol and CO2. So that's going to get it to 11 or 12%, right? You do the second fermentation, and then you filter out that yeast under pressure, and then you bottle. And now you've got a VC Prosecco. Now, one of the big differences here is filtering under pressure. We don't filter champagne, right? Champagne, stylistically, we usually like to kind of taste the lees, the yeast, and the aging. We age champagne sometimes 10 years before we even sell it, go to market, right? Prosecco, usually, the whole idea with Prosecco is we want it to be fresh, right? The Villa Sandy, does anyone sell the Villa Sandy?
No.
Might be more on
I haven't seen it in the market.
It's one of our wines. It's really good, but it's usually on premise or maybe independent retail. They call it Il Fresco. That means a little fresh guy, right? Il Fresco, Prosecco. So they usually want those fruity flavors coming at you first with Prosecco. They don't necessarily want a bunch of biscuity and doughy and yeasty stuff, right? So they're stylistically different. And that's what the Italians want to drink. They want to drink something that's fresh and delicious. And, people that like champagne want to taste the age and the way that oxidation happens. So it's just two different styles. Any questions about the tank method?
So instead of doing it bottle by bottle, it's just one giant tank.
Just one big tank. Yep.
Gotcha.
They throw the lid on, and normal tanks will be bubbling, and that CO2 gets lost. They slap a lid on there. So let's go ahead, and with your 2 glasses, go ahead and pour you guys have the Nicholas Foyat, right?
Yes. You said to get the Villa Sandy and the Nicholas Foyat.
Yeah, let's pour the let's do Villa Sandy in the first one and Nicholas Foyat in the second, actually. And while you all are doing that, I'll tell you about a different type of tank method. This one you don't come across as much. It's kind of the Asti method, right? Moscato di Asti, more the dessert wine method.
Mm-hmm.
This one starts out as grape juice. That's the big difference here. You don't start with a wine. You start with a usually pretty sweet grape juice.
Is that what makes it more sweet and less dry?
No, that's not the determining factor. This is in a second, I'll tell you. So it starts with grape juice. Actually, so I don't even know. The grapes are probably sweeter than most grapes, but they might not be. I might have just lied to you. But the big difference here is you throw them in a tank, you add your yeast. So you're basically doing everything normal except that it's sealed. And you go through your first fermentation, but then you stop it once it gets to about 5%, 5 or 6% alcohol. You stop it by getting it really cold because yeast can't live when it's too cold, right? And then you filter that yeast out and then you bottle. So what's happening here is it's almost like you're fermenting a wine halfway, right?
It's really good.
The Foyat or the Villa?
Foyat.
Yeah. So you basically ferment it halfway, and then what do you have left over? There's a lot of sugar still left, right? So it's like you get about halfway, there's 5% alcohol, you completely stop it, you get that yeast out of there, and now you've got something that's slightly effervescent, right? Slightly sparkling, frizzante, they call it, and it's still really sweet. This method is, you're not going to see it as much. You see it in Moscato di Asti. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
Let's try a champagne first. Everyone take some sips of it as I tell you about where it's from. And let me know if you can taste or smell any of the biscuity, bready stuff along with the fruits as well. So we've got Champagne up here way far north. This is one of the furthest north growing regions in the world. Really cold up here. And that's good for Champagne. They can grow Pinot Noir and Chardonnay and whatever normal grapes, but it doesn't really get warm enough for them to be great wines, right? So they just pick a little early when it would make a wine that's about 9 or 10% alcohol. And that's why it's perfect for it up there. Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Meunier are usually the grapes we're using. Has anyone seen the term Cremant on a bottle?
Cremant?
Yeah, Cremant.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, like Gerard Bertrand has a Cremant. We've got a couple Cremonts. You've probably seen it around. All that word means is it is made in the Champagne style in a different region of France.
Okay.
So we've got Gerard Bertrand has got Cremant de Limoux, right? They're making it in the Champagne style down here in Limoux. And that wine's awesome for that. For the money, it's $20. And it's just as expensive to make as Champagne, pretty much. Grapes are cheaper. There's Cremant de Bourgogne, which is the French word for Burgundy. Cremant de Loire, you'll see that. You might even see Cremant de Bordeaux, even though it's not on here. But Cremant just means, hey, we're making it in the same expensive Champagne method, but not in Champagne. Spain, have you seen a cava? Cava's all over the place, right?
Yeah.
This is also in the Champagne method. Pretty crazy because they can get cava pretty cheap. Okay. Any questions on that? So the biggest place for tank fermented sparkling wines is Prosecco, right? Once again, it's kind of cold up here, kind of like Champagne. So it's good because those grapes, it's easy to use those grapes with a little less sugar in them naturally to make a 9 or 10% wine, right? That we're going to go through second fermentation. The grape is called Glera. And we're usually looking for that fresh style, right? And then Moscato d'Asti, Asti is up here in Piedmont. That's where the majority of that style of tank method comes from. People do it other places, but most of it comes from, it's associated with Moscato d'Asti. Okay, I think I've got a tasting slide, so we'll talk about it here in a minute. If not, we'll just talk about it when we're done. Well, let's talk about some labeling terms. Because the French, of course, are super annoying in how they label everything. So we've got Brut Nature, which is nothing added, basically. Extra Brut, extra dry, sec, demi-sec, and doux. So here's the weird thing. This is the biggest thing you'll get asked about in the store. Oh, which one of these is sweeter? Is it the Brut or the extra dry?
Extra dry.
The extra dry is actually a little sweeter, right? So what happened is, and the reason this is, I don't know if this is true, but this is a story I'm going to tell because I heard it and I like it. Back in the 1700s, the French were making champagne in this doux style or demi-sec style, right? So it was pretty sweet. I mean, that's really sweet. And so the British liked things drier, and that was one of their biggest markets, right? So they say, oh, you guys like it dry? Okay. Well, we just came out with a new wine called sec, which means dry. And they go, oh, okay, that's cool. Well, we wanted even drier than that, right? So then they came out with extra dry, right? Which is drier than sec, but that's still got some sweetness on it. And so they said, okay, all right, young drifter, we'll make you one called Brut, which is even drier than extra dry. And they could still, those damn Brits could not be satisfied. So they had to make an extra Brut. And then Brut Nature, right? So that's why it's kind of backwards, but they started down here where it was much sweeter. So today we're used to things going the other way, right? So, but today if you see a demi-sec, that's pretty sweet for champagne. Sec is even pretty sweet. Doux is really, it's like a dessert wine. Like we have this Nicolas Foyat, that Delicious, that's real sweet. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool.
So is it the aging process that makes it more dry, or is it just the level of sweetness added?
Great question. It's all about that dosage, right? So remember when we've got our little yeast cube down here, we freeze it, flip it, the yeast cube pops up. Then we got to top up, right? So we add a little extra wine, and that's when we determine this scale.
The sweetness, as well as the dryness.
Yep. If you just add bone dry white wine or still wine,
the less sweetness added, the drier.
Correct.
Okay, and so you've got this
Add a
whole
wine
ride
that's
and drink
really
scale.
sweet into it, and
Okay.
then it becomes dew.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Great question.
You did say that already.
Well, no, it's okay. It's a good. I wanted to. I told in my head. I said, remember to bring that up again once we talk about this, and then I forgot. So 1 point to Stacy. Any questions about that? Oh, we do have a tasting slide. Okay, so let's taste those two wines.
So is the Foyat, the bottle, and the Prosecco is the tank method?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, one thing, not to get too technical, but usually champagne houses are not going to ferment the small bottle. They're not going to do bottle conditioning for the small bottle. They do something called the transfer method, where they do it in the original bottles, and then they pop out the yeast, and then they pour them into a big tank, and then bottle them.
Right, because it's small.
Yeah. Although what's crazy is Corbel does bottle ferment their little 187s.
I
Oh,
haven't
really?
seen Corbel 187s.
They are there.
I'm sure they exist, of course, but I just haven't seen them. But
We were just out there a couple weeks ago for CSW trip. So if you ever take your CSW, we will send you to Napa for an educational trip. And we stayed at Corbel, which is a wonderful place to stay. They have a really nice campus, basically. Not campus, it's a bunch of old houses. And we went through the tour, and I just assumed, I've never heard of anyone fermenting in the small bottles. They do it for every single bottle.
wow.
It's crazy. And that's another thing about Corbel. They do champagne method, and they're $15.
Wow.
It's crazy. Put that next to any other, sparkling wine that price. Most people are doing some sort of tank, something. Most people are
Not
not.
like a mass production method rather than individualizing it.
Yep. Michelle does the same thing. They also do Domaine Saint Michel Brut is also champagne method, which is it's impressive.
Did you say the Prosecco is sweeter than the Foyat?
That is often the case, even or it will be perceived as a little sweeter because it's
just lighter.
I don't know. I'm not looking at the actual grams of sugar, but it'll feel sweeter if anything because it's usually fruitier. Would you guys agree with that? Which one feels?
Yeah, it's fruit.
I do. That's
Fruitier
what
and
I
fruit.
noticed. It's a little more fruity, lighter.
Is that what that?
What'd you say, Artie?
I said, is that what that was? I couldn't tell what the difference was. I thought it was because I tried the other one like immediately after or something, but it was definitely a difference. I couldn't put an adjective to describe what it was though.
The fruit I always get on it, it's like with Prosecco or often is like kind of melon type of fruit, like cantaloupe and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
And
it's like going from a biscuit to a slice of melon.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good way to compare.
That's you get a point for that. That's like my quote for today. It's like going from a biscuit to a slice of melon.
That's pretty good.
And it's just a stylistic difference, right? So some people really like to, and that's why we usually don't use champagne for mimosas and stuff, because champagne, you want to taste the biscuit, you want to taste the age, right?
When you put some kind of juice in it, it's like you're kind of off. But with the Prosecco, it's more copacetic because they kind of go hand in hand.
100%. And also with mimosa, you can just use the cheapie. It doesn't really matter so much. But Prosecco definitely, like if you have a choice at your house and you want to make mimosa, pick the Prosecco over the champagne for sure, or anything that's bottle fermented, because yeast also can just the yeasty biscuit can just kind of taste weird with OJ.
Yeah, they don't always line up.
Exactly. So which do you guys prefer? And there's no wrong answer here.
I prefer the Foyat.
Yeah, I've been enjoying the Foyat, but I mean the Prosecco it's yummy, but it's a little on the sweeter side. This is just kind of more hearty, and you've got a lot of that effervescence. It's just like really hanging with me. This one's just a little bit lighter.
Does anyone like the Villa Sandy better?
I mean, honestly, the Villa Sandy seems a little bit lighter than the Nicholas Flayette to me. I like the Villa Sandy better.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's
Yeah, I like
very
the
good flavor.
freshness of it.
Yeah.
Both great.
Yeah, they're apples and oranges too. I shouldn't even ask what you prefer, but some people, some people just prefer bottle fermented style, and some people like the fresh, something that's fresh. So it all kind of, I like them both.
Maybe that's the difference, because it feels like the Foyat's more pungent.
Yeah, exactly.
Connor, we should have tried the Palme d'Or rosé.
Yeah, I'll get right on that. Bust
Add it to our tasting.
That is honestly one of the best wines I've ever put in my mouth.
Yeah. So
What's
I've never had the
making out of
rosé.
it? I haven't heard of that one.
So that's we call it. Every champagne house has what they call a tête de cuvée. Tête de cuvée. It means tête means head, so it's like their big wine, right? Like their master wine. So the one, so Palme d'Or is like $200-300, and I've never had the rosé. Usually in Champagne, the rosé is more expensive.
Yeah, you can get the regular for like $220. The rosé is like $240-260.
Well, I get his reaction now where he's like, okay, I'll get right on that.
Yeah, we just blow out the sample budget on one bottle.
But if any of y'all ever want to really get a nice bottle of wine and willing to pay for it, that is one of the best ones you can buy.
Yeah, it is great. So, one last thing I wanted to say about the Villa Sandy, I'm going to sell it to you guys. Is they call it Il Fresco, right? Where did it go? And the reason they call it the little fresh guy, where is he? Yeah, Il Fresco, right? So what they actually do with this, can everyone say that on three? Give me the Italian hand and say Il Fresco, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Il
Fresco.
Il Fresco, right? The little fresh boy. So the reason that they call it that too is they actually freeze the juice, right? They'll harvest a bunch of grapes and they freeze it until there's demand for it in the market. So let's say the US needs to place an order for whatever, 100 pallets or whatever. They'll then thaw it out and then create the Prosecco right then. Put it through the method because you can do it pretty quickly, right? And they want it to be as fresh as possible. So they keep it frozen, which is kind of cool. Not a lot of Proseccos do that. Okay. Cool. Any other thoughts on those two wines? All right. Now we're going to get into white wine. If you guys want, you can pour, make sure, I think it's going to be Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc are the next two. Hold off, actually. Let me make sure before I tell you the wrong thing. Let's talk about, and what time do we have? Does anyone need a break? Is it 9:15 already? Do we need a 2-minute pee break?
If you want.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's take a quick, let's meet back here at 9:15, 3-minute pee break. Yeah,
I'll take my dog outside.
Oh, I know, they usually come in the day before and change it, so the first time that I write down, I need to. Yeah, they usually do. Yeah. If I hadn't killed him by then.
All right. Everyone pretty much back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Josh, did you take a bathroom break in the car?
Yeah, I got a little bottle over here.
The Nicholas Foyot bottle works well for that after you're done with
Expensive pee bottle right there.
it. Hard to recork it though. Well, actually it has a little screw cap, so we're good. All right, let's talk about some white wine. We're gonna go through the process here real quick. So we harvest the grapes and it's time for the crush, right? Now with white wines, we're not trying to go through a long maceration, right?
Okay.
We don't need them to hang out on the skins because we're not trying to get a lot of color for 98% of white wine. There are a couple people that do funky things and that's great. But for most white wines, we're going to press them almost immediately, which pressing is getting the juice off of those skins, right? In the most basic sense, you're pressing that juice and removing the skins, right? So now you've got this beautiful, clear-ish, straw-colored, yellow-colored grape juice, right? Now we're going to ferment it, and you can ferment either in stainless steel. Some people choose to ferment in oak. It's up to you. But you ferment in some sort of vessel, and then you can mature in some sort of vessel. Now, like if you're making Chardonnay, for instance, you might ferment in a barrel and then mature in the same barrel. It's not like you have to move, it could be, that can happen in the same thing. Same thing is true with stainless steel, but you're probably going to ferment in one tank and then move it into a different stainless steel tank, right? Oops. And then we're going to bottle it, and then you guys are going to go sell it like crazy, right? Oops, going the wrong way. And now we got white wine. That all makes sense, bird's eye view?
It does. Do they always do Chardonnays in oak, or are those sometimes made in stainless steel as well?
Nope. You have, as a winemaker, you have options for any wine, any grape to do it any way you want. There's no rules, right? And Chardonnay is one of the ones we'll talk about too in a bit. The winemakers really like it because you have a lot of options, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sauvignon Blanc Sauvignon Blanc, usually if you're going, some grapes are really aromatic, like Sauvignon Blanc, like Riesling. You're usually going to put them in stainless steel because oak can kind of mask the aromatics a little bit, right? So you want them with wines. It's kind of like the Champagne versus Prosecco thing. Some certain white wines you want to be really fresh and aromatic. And if you're looking for a fresh wine and aromatic, you usually go stainless steel. It just preserves, it's less oxidative in the environment. We'll talk about that right here.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So with maturation, if you want to mature the wine, you might mature with oxygen, meaning a barrel is kind of like a cork, right? It lets a little bit of oxygen through it.
Yeah.
So it's going to oxidize things just a little bit. It also adds flavor from the wood, right? There's tannin, there's flavor, there's vanilla, there's baking spices, all sorts of things it can add, right? So if you do it with oak, or you can use, a lot of people like to mimic oak, which is much cheaper, you can use staves, which are just like little oak planks that you can throw in there like a tea bag, right? You're just adding some of those flavor. It cuts costs down by a lot. You can even use oak chips, which you just throw in there. It looks like mulch almost, or a little bit finer. You throw it in there, and then you would filter the wine out after it gets some of that flavor. Most of your really cheap Chardonnay, for instance, would maybe have staves or oak chips, whereas more expensive wines would maybe have oak because it's more expensive, right? And we do that. We talk about that a lot with Chardonnay, but so there are there's quite a few white wine grapes that are oak. The one you're gonna hear about most would be Chardonnay, right? And then you can also mature without oxygen, which is stainless steel or in the bottle, right? You're trying to create an anaerobic environment, no oxygen. You want to keep things fresh. Okay, so we're going to taste through a couple things, and I like to bring this a little bit out from the WSET, right? This is one of their slides. Stole it. I have no problem with stealing it. It's very helpful. So when we're talking about white wines, we're going to talk about the color a little bit, whether we think it's straw, yellow, or gold in color. We're going to talk about the aromatics. Do we think this one's more neutral in aromatics? Is it more moderate or is it intense? What's the acidity like? And then what fruits are we getting? Are we getting more orchard fruits? We call these orchard fruits here because they grow on trees, right? Pears, apples, citrus like lemon, right? Stone fruits. If we talk about stone fruits, we're talking about peaches, apricots, right? These are fruits that have a stone or a pit in them, right? So you hear people say that all the time. And then tropical fruits are fruits that grow in tropical climates, right? And one thing that's kind of interesting that you'll notice is that cooler climate wines tend to be up here. And as things warm up, we move down here, and then warmer climates tend to create wines with more tropical flavors. Sometimes it's the grape that has those flavors, but oftentimes if it comes from a cool climate, it'll taste like apples, pears. Does that all make sense? Let's go ahead and pour your Chardonnay. You see some here. Yeah, cool. Actually, yeah, pour the Chardonnay, and I want to kind of go through this little exercise real quick, right here. So we're taking a look at it. What do you guys say? What's the color closest to? And what I like to do, pour a little bit of this.
Maybe an apple?
Say what?
Maybe like an apple, like a yellow apple, or
Yeah, and for color, I'm kind of looking for, is it closer to strong, which would be kind of how this looks right here, or yellow, or gold, kind of dark, like a dark yellow or gold. What is this one closest to?
I'd
maybe
say
kind of in
straw.
the middle. I would say it's more yellow.
Yellow?
Yellow.
Yellow to straw, yeah. Perfect. And then we talk about aromatic intensity lots of times with white wines, and that's just put it like maybe about right here, your nose right there. Are the fruit flavors jumping out of the glass, or is it more, and I say fruit flavors, I'm not talking about oak or butter. Is the fruitiness jumping out, or is it more subtle? Josh,
I feel like it's really aromatic. I'm getting a lot of fruit.
okay.
Yeah, I am too.
Cool. All right. What do you guys have? Sonoma-Cutrer or KJ?
I got the Cutrer. I hadn't had it before.
Okay, cool. All right. The next thing we'll do is take a swig and make sure you really get some of that wine underneath your tongue, and then swallow and pay attention to how much you salivate. Because the more you salivate under your tongue, the more acidity is in the wine. So if you were to lick this lemon up here, what would happen in your mouth? You would salivate a bunch. That's pure citric acid, right?
You're gonna get that in the back of your jaw.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like
So
that.
more
tart.
acid means more salivation. And so that's can help you. And, once you start comparing this one to another wine, you say, oh, this one was more acidic than the other one. That's what people are talking about. Okay, I just wanted to kind of run through that. Now let's talk about Chardonnay, and we'll go back to the tasting here in a second. So Chardonnay is one of the most versatile grapes on the planet. It can grows in almost every wine growing region in the world, almost. And people want to mimic it because people love Chardonnay. And it changes a lot from climate to climate. And as a winemaker, you've got a lot of options with Chardonnay. You can do a lot of stuff because it's kind of like a blank palette in a way, canvas, right? It's usually a neutral grape, they would call it. So there's not as much. There is definitely some fruit, but you don't get like a ton of like compare it to Sauvignon Blanc or Riesling, you get a bunch of fruit. This one's can be a bit more muted. So from a cool climate, like let's say you're in northern France and you're growing Chardonnay, or in the Russian River Valley, where it's in parts of the Russian River Valley that can get really cool, you're going to have high acidity. You're going to have a lot of these orchard fruits we talked about. When things heat up a little bit, you get more of the citrus fruit and stone fruits, tropical fruits, right? And then let's say you go down to a warm climate. Let's say you're in certain parts of California, the Central Valley or somewhere, and it's hot. Then you get more of the tropical banana type of fruits. All makes sense?
Yep.
Now, the cool thing about winemaking with Chardonnay is you got a lot of options, right? You can do, have you guys ever heard of mallow?
I haven't.
It's called malolactic conversion or malolactic fermentation, they'll call it. They'll say, oh, wow, this wine feels like it has some mallow on it. Well, what happens is it's a choice the winemaker can make. They'll say, oh, I want this wine to go through malolactic, and you can just add the bacteria, basically, that converts the citrus acid in the wine into lactic acid. So have you ever heard of a buttery Chardonnay? Creamy Chardonnay?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Comes from mallow.
Like in that picture, that wine looks kind of cloudy. Is that kind of the idea, is that it has less of like a clear appearance?
This, I think, is actually, that might be the lees, the dead yeast cells are
Yeah.
shown right there, I think.
So whenever it's the milk, it's more of like the buttery flavor.
Yeah.
Because
Creamy.
I mean, I've had a buttery chard before, and it, obviously still has a clear appearance, but it has a rich flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's from mallow. Mallow doesn't, I don't think makes it cloudy.
So that's just the yeast. Okay.
Yeah. And this looks like it was maybe, and oftentimes from barrels, the juice will look like this at first because it just needs time to kind of rest and settle out. And then that's more, maybe it might just be unfined and unfiltered, it hasn't been filtered yet. So sometimes wine will look like that.
Oh, I see.
They also do a thing called lees stirring. Well, they'll stir up the dead yeast cells, and that's probably when they took this out. That will look kind of milky. That makes the wine look like that while you're stirring up the yeast. But yeah, if you got a buttery Chardonnay, it's probably got mallow. They probably went through malolactic conversion or fermentation. You can also choose to let the wine sit on its lees, right? Which gives some interesting bready or yeasty characters, kind of like the champagne, right? And Chardonnay plays really well with oak, right? So it gives you the toasty vanilla type of notes. Now, if you're a Chardonnay winemaker, you don't have to do any of this. You can make it the same way you make a Sauvignon Blanc, right? Make it a Chablis. It's usually unoaked, right? Chablis is Chardonnay the north of France and Burgundy. They say, nope, we want it fresh. Or Diatom is another one we have from Santa Barbara that is all about, I want this to be pure. I don't want oak. I don't want mallow. I don't want lees. So then it can be just really fresh Chardonnay. Or you could be like, okay, I want to do oak aging, but I don't want to do mallow. I want to do lees contact, but I don't want to do oak aging. You got a lot of options as a Chardonnay maker, right?
I'm glad you mentioned that because I was just about to ask. So when it's unoaked, should you drink it? Like, should you not let it sit in the fridge for example, for 2 years or so? Or
oh, that's a good question. That's a great question. So I think I would probably drink it sooner than I would an oaked Chardonnay.
Right.
oak can kind of help things in a cellar a little bit. So I think
Right,
you're
okay.
probably right. Although, if it's under 5 years, it probably doesn't matter too much.
Okay.
But if you're trying to age for the long haul, you might want something that has oak and acid. Acid also helps things keep in a cellar.
Right. Okay. And then these small bottles, are they, how you said only Corbel does the, Chardonnay thing with, the champagne
Bottle
thing,
fermentation.
small bottles? Are
Yeah.
is there anything that we're missing like we did with the Nick Fiat and the other one from these like small bottles or?
So for all the still wines, they're all made in big tank and then filled. All the
And
bottles
that's
are
it.
filled the same way.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's the exact same juice. Now, and not to go off on a tangent, but they do age differently in smaller bottles versus bigger bottles. Because
Right.
there's less surface area and less contact, the ratio of contact from that cork to the rest of the wine is different.
Okay.
In our podcast, if you guys, I don't know if anyone listened to that this week, Joel Gott was on, and he was talking about the small bottles settle out quicker. So for his Sauvignon Blanc, which we're about to try, he says it gets a little frizzante. It's got a little bit of sparkle at first when you first bottle it, and they have to wait a while to release it, like 6 weeks or whatever. But the small bottles are ready quicker, ready in like 2 or 3 weeks. That's another just little difference.
Yeah, and that I think makes sense because it's like you said, less space,
Yeah.
like less room to stretch out. Like you just kind of.
Yeah, if you're one of the cellar nerds, magnums age a lot different. The bigger bottles will age differently and maybe slower than the smaller. So a lot of people like to collect magnums. Okay, any questions there?
Is that Adam Driver on your slide?
It absolutely is. He's supposed to be like a Karen that wants more butter.
I'm looking at this face and I'm like, I know that face. But why is this man in a turtleneck and sunglasses and a wig? I'm like, that can't be Adam Driver, but it's obviously Adam Driver. Is that like a bit or something? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's from his Star Wars. He was the character who said more. And so
that's funny. Okay, that's it. We can get back on topic. Sorry. I just was
no. It's important to know your meme, right? Okay, so we already talked about Chardonnay with Champagne, right? We grow it a lot up here. Burgundy is this is the ancestral home of Chardonnay. If you see a white Burgundy, that's a Chardonnay. And we grow it a lot in southern France as well. But really, almost everywhere grows Chardonnay. Here are some of ours. We've got this Italian one, Bramito, from Antinori, is incredible. That's Pouilly Foussé. We've got Moillard. We've got Chablis here, Renaud. And then the New World growing regions. Obviously, California grows a lot of Chardonnay. Chile, Argentina, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. All the most important wine regions basically grow Chardonnay because they all try to copy Burgundy at first. Here are some of ours. You guys are either drinking one of these two right here, Sonoma Cutrer or KJ. The Stag's Leap, if anyone's tried that, is really good.
I haven't tried that one yet. I think I've only had the Chateau.
Is that the Caria?
So this is just the regular, Stag's Leap winery Chardonnay. The Caria is Stag's Leap Wine Cellars. We got both Stag's Leap. This one's a little more affordable, as in it's $30. Caria might be like 40. I can't remember.
Definitely got that marked down to $20 right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Give me up a bottle.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
That's great. Oh, I could have waited to do the tasting notes here. So what do you guys think of we already talked about the color, aromatics. We said it's kind of maybe moderate or neutral, or somebody said it's really fruity. It's kind of different. What fruits are if you had to pick a fruit group or a fruit, what would you guys say?
Orchard.
For the Cutrer?
Yeah.
Definitely apple and lemon.
Yeah, lemon too.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys all kind of Artie and Josh and Stacy all said top of the
Lemon.
orchard.
Yeah, the Kucher is more top of the chart and more acidic to me than the Kendall Jackson is.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think I wouldn't say it's like a high acidity. I would, I guess, go like with more moderate, but you definitely pick it up.
Yeah, and you know, Sonoma Cutrer is pretty a cooler growing area. We're in the Russian River. I mean, Kendall Jackson's in Sonoma. What they're sourcing from Sonoma, that's where they're based, but they're also getting stuff from other parts of California too. So you're probably right. I think it's probably a little more, maybe more mid palate fruits here, stone fruits and whatnot. Now, make sure you keep some wine in your glass because we want to compare it to the Sauvignon Blanc. So go ahead and pour your Sauvignon Blanc, your Joel Gott.
Smells really good.
Sauvignon Blanc in general usually is grown in a cooler climate, right? Maybe moderate. The grape in general has a lot of acidity in it compared to Chardonnay grape or other grapes. It's got a lot of acid, just the actual grape does. It's usually very aromatic. So what I want you to do too is do that aroma trick where you
And
put your
swirl.
nose right above the glass and compare the fruit.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe more pear,
Right.
peach kind of.
Yeah.
Like a more like a different kind of sweetness to it.
Right.
Less tart.
Stone fruit, you know.
And is it more intense, the fruit, than the Chardonnay?
Mm,
Which one jumps out more?
Yeah. I think this does.
you know, I feel like they're both pretty intense, and like when you put your nose to it, like you're picking up a definite sense of a fruit, but like this is more of like a tart. This is a little more sweet, a little more acid than this. I haven't tasted it yet, but it smells more sweet.
Yeah, so that may be more ripe. Is that what that means? Maybe.
Yeah,
Like
maybe.
fruit.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I agree.
the
Little low. I would say low acid on this one, and I haven't even tasted it just based on the way it smells and like the alcohol. You know, sometimes when you I don't know if it's the alcohol or the acidity, but sometimes it kind of gives you a little burn.
yeah.
Not getting any burn from the smell.
Yeah, you could smell the alcohol. The acidity you got to be careful on. That's mainly a tactile thing, so you might want to try that and then make sure check under your tongue how much you're drooling.
How would you say that California Sauvignon Blancs like this compared to like a New Zealand?
That's a great question. So New Zealand is much colder in general. So New Zealand usually is sharper, and they usually have to leave a little bit of residual sugar too, just to kind of balance it out. But even though you wouldn't tell, New Zealand to me sometimes has a lot of grapefruit, like a big,
Yeah, a lot of that gooseberry grapefruit.
Yep. Whereas California can be a little more either tropical or you can kind of go the spectrum, but sometimes people call Sauvignon Blanc from California grassy. But
It's a little more earthy than New Zealand is the way I describe it. And I actually, when I cook, I prefer to cook with California Sauvignon Blanc over New Zealand because it is more of a neutral, more of a mid.
Yeah, New Zealand can be really
a lot
tart.
less acid.
Yeah, exactly. Can have more of that tart fruit, like the grapefruit or
Right.
gooseberry or whatever. Most of them have no oak. Most people, when they're making Sauvignon Blanc, they want to be young and fresh, right? Let's ferment it and then mature it as much as we have, or let it rest in the stainless steel as short as possible, then put it in a bottle, get it and sell it because they want it to be fresh. Robert Mondavi does it differently. He makes a fume blanc is what he calls it. He branded that term. He puts it in some old oak that gives it some roundness and makes it kind of interesting. But most people will do, and they do that in Bordeaux too. They'll put it in Bordeaux blancs or in a little bit of oak, but usually not new oak. It's just for the roundness type of thing. Most people though will just release it unoaked. So let's talk about different areas real quick. If it is from a very cold climate, you'll get a lot of herbaceous notes. You might even get some asparagus. As it warms up, you get a lot more citrus and green fruit, and then into stone fruits and tropical fruits when you get warmer. And then where we're growing Sauvignon Blanc is a lot of places. The most famous area probably is Sancerre. You ever heard of Sancerre? That's
the good
Sauvignon
stuff.
Blanc, Loire, Eastern Loire. Puy-Fumé is another name you might see. Bordeaux, if it's Bordeaux Blanc, if it's a white bottle of Bordeaux, it's probably Sauvignon Blanc and maybe Semillon, but it's probably a lot of Sauvignon Blanc. We grow a lot in the Loire, and then down here where Gerard Bertrand is in the Pays d'Oc, right?
So a Fumé Blanc, that's basically a Sauvignon Blanc from that area.
So Fumé Blanc is basically a marketing thing that Mondavi did. He wanted to change the name. Sauvignon Blanc was being sold in big jugs back in the 60s. And so he said, I want to rebrand it. So he stole the name Fumé from Puy-Fumé and used that and borrowed it and said, all right, we're going to call this Fumé Blanc from Napa. And the rebranding worked. And then people started, people in the 60s and 70s were drinking Fumé Blanc. That was Sauvignon Blanc. And his style was like a slightly oaked version.
Okay.
I think Chateau Saint Jean makes a Fumé Blanc. There's probably 4 or 5 that use that term that Mondavi invented. It was all inspired by Puy-Fumé.
Wow.
Then we got New World. Pretty much, once again, anywhere that makes wine in the New World makes Sauvignon Blanc, some more than others. New Zealand makes a shitload, as we know. Australia, not as much, but they do make some. South Africa makes a lot. Chile makes a lot. We make a lot in California and Washington. So what compare the color of these two real quick too. How are we doing on time?
The Sauvignon Blanc draws in the Chardonnay.
Say it again, Bill.
The Sauvignon Blanc's a little more toward the straw than the Chardonnay.
Yes.
Yeah, so the Chardonnay is a little darker in color.
I think so.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that'll happen a lot where Chardonnay, especially with like oak age or a little bit, will be a little more in the yellow.
Right.
Sauvignon Blanc will be a little closer to straw. Not always, but most of the time.
Yeah. A little bit lighter.
Aromatics tend to be more on the intense side for Sauvignon Blanc, depends on where you get it from. Acidity usually is higher in the high range for Sauvignon Blanc. And you can get these fruits. Okay. Do we have the 14 hands?
Yes.
Pinot Grigio. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I couldn't remember because Savannah did not get it, I think. Make sure we got all right. So we got 2 more wines and we got to sit through these. I apologize, Jai. So go ahead and pour the Pinot Grigio and the Sutter Home Sweet Riesling. Ooh, excuse me, y'all. And let me tell you about this grape, because we know this is the same grape, right? Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio. Does anyone know why they would call it different things?
Gris is from France and Grigio is from Italy. It's just how they say the word.
Exactly. Where'd you go, Mike? There you are.
Was it the same
I always
process?
wondered about that.
Well, and yeah, it's just the same grape. There might be a slightly different clone. There are different clones, same grape, but there is another big difference too in its style.
They're handled differently, aren't they?
Exactly. So Pinot Gris originated in Alsace, the style that Oregon copies, right? Alsace is in eastern France. It's behind a mountain range. It gets really hot there. It's a rain shadow effect. So it gets really warm and they can make it pretty ripe, right? They can let it hang on the vine until September, late September, then they pick, and they've got something that's a little riper. So it's more full bodied and you get more of the tropical fruits, right? Riper, warmer. Our buddies in Italy that are making Pinot Grigio, we're talking northeast Italy, kind of near where we make Prosecco, right? It's cooler there. Also, they choose to harvest a lot earlier. So the Italians, it's hot in a lot of parts of Italy. They want something that's crisp, clean, refreshing, right? So they will harvest in August, let's say. And so they're harvesting something with more acidity and less sugar, right? So they've got a dry, high acid, light bodied wine that they call Pinot Grigio. Pinot Gris, even though it's the same grape, is harvested a month later and it's warmer. So it means it's riper, more sugar, and more of these riper fruits. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And what's really important here is when you see something labeled that in the New World, if you see it labeled as Pinot Grigio, this is a style they're going after. You can choose to label it Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigio. You can do whatever you want. Let's say I make wine in California. I might call it Pinot Grigio because I want it to be dry, high acid, refreshing. Not as much going on, if you ask me, which is fine. Sometimes that's what you want on a hot day, right? If I'm in Oregon and I want to copy the Alsatian style, I'll call it Pinot Gris, which is a little fuller bodied, so fatter, right? So we're drinking 14 Hands Pinot Grigio, which, what do we think about this? What's the color, aromatics, acidity, and then fruits and floral? We call this, what color do we think it is?
I think it's pretty yellow.
Yeah.
Kind of in the middle there.
Yeah, but
And then is it, if you put it up, do the smell test about right here, does it jumping out? Is it more neutral? Is it moderate, or is it intense?
I think it's pretty neutral.
Yeah.
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 crazy.
I got some.
Pretty neutral.
I got some like pear on the nose a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Pinot
Yeah.
Grigio is probably the most neutral, one of the most neutral grapes. But yeah, you will get some orchard fruits probably and some other things.
Mhm.
I always call Pinot Grigio the vodka of wine, right? It's kind of just, I love it, but there's not a ton going on with it always.
It's not like an overwhelming smell. It's
Yeah, it can be pretty kind of, plain Jane in a great way. Like on a hot day, catch me with a Pinot Grigio all day long, right?
Good for a wedding to hit kind of all the taste palettes.
Yes, exactly. And
it
it's
tastes
great
really
for
good.
weddings because people don't have strong opinions about it always. Like Chardonnay, some people love it and sometimes people hate it.
Yeah, that's true.
Pinot Grigio is pretty unoffensive, right?
Yeah, it's more of the people pleaser.
Exactly. What do you guys think about the acidity? Do we try it and think it's
I don't really
Feel
feel like I've
Oh,
cited it
ass
very
feels
much.
low.
Slightly, maybe not super high, but slight acidity. Slight
Yeah,
acidity.
it's pretty moderate.
Yeah, this one, a proper Pinot Grigio, we don't have any small formats of like an Italian Pinot Grigio that could show you that usually pretty high acid. 14 Hands is made different, it's made differently.
Yeah.
And the fruits can be from all over. They'll probably be more, to Josh's point, up here in that orchard realm. And then we'll go on to Riesling for a little contrast here. And we're tasting Sunderholm Sweet Riesling. So Riesling, usually from a pretty cold climate, sometimes moderate, very aromatic, naturally high acidity. It's kind of like Sauvignon Blanc in these first three, right? High acidity, very aromatic. But you can make it dry, off dry, or sweet. Stacy just made a hilarious face while tasting hers.
It's sweet.
It's very sweet.
It's very sweet, in my opinion.
That's the sweetest edge of Riesling you can get.
Yeah, I don't think I was expecting it. I don't think I've had that before.
Yeah.
It's almost like a candy.
Exactly. We're almost in dessert wine territory with this particular one.
And I guess
Oh.
I shouldn't expect anything less, but I just wasn't ready for it. But yeah. Ooh.
Now try that
For
next
me-
to Chateau Saint Michel dry Riesling, which is a really nice, well-made Riesling that's almost completely dry. And you can,
I try and get people to try that all the time because you can really taste the Riesling grape without the sweetness.
exactly.
That's
really
that's
love-
that's a really good one.
I think I
Really,
prefer something a little more on the dry side. Not
Same.
that the sweet is bad. I mean, it tastes yummy, but it's just kind of a lot, I guess, to have more than a glass of.
Exactly. That's why a dry Riesling you would maybe love, because it's crisp. It's got some of the same flavors, but you can drink. So we have a chicken wing party every year. We just had it a couple weeks ago, where we match heat and sweet. So you do the dry Riesling with mild wings. You do an off dry Riesling with medium wings, and you do hot wings with like Harvest Select Sweet Riesling, or something that's got a lot more sugar, and it's awesome the way they play.
Yeah, I feel like I saw that it was on your podcast, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of like tied them all up together. That's really interesting and a lot of fun, I think, to do.
Yeah,
for the big
it
group.
makes for a fun, or like honestly, it makes for a really fun party. You could tell people to bring.
I bet I'll have to try that.
Yeah, but works with any heat too. You could do it with, works with Indian food. It works with anything with spice, basically. The sweet will will mellow out the heat. So here we're not growing Riesling in warm climates. We just talked about cool and moderate. So you've got the orchard fruits, lime, stone fruits, and then a lot of people, we were talking about high acidity means you can age it really well. People age Rieslings for a long time. You can put those in the cellar because they have so much acid that they can last. And you get this kind of honey thing in the cellar.
I feel like I'm getting a lot of honey flavor. Maybe that's what the sweetness is to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that for sure.
Might explain the face. I'm not crazy about honey. I find it overwhelmingly sweet.
We all have different preferences, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's all good. And Riesling, of course, is most famous in Germany. Austria makes a lot too. In France, Alsace also grows a lot of Riesling. Washington State, some parts of California, and Australia makes really famous world-class Riesling.
I feel like I've only heard of the Sauv Blanc from Australia. Or no, I'm thinking New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah.
I'm thinking New
And
Zealand.
almost every country makes everything. New Zealand makes a lot of Sauvignon Blanc, though, and Pinot Noir. Those are by far, that's together 95%, whatever. I'm making that number up, but it's a majority of their production. All right, we kind of just went through that. I think that concludes our tasting portion. We're going to talk about a couple more grapes, and I've got 8 minutes to do it. So let's talk about Moscato real quick. It's one of the oldest grape varieties in the world. The ancient Greeks and stuff were drinking Moscato, right? It's one of my favorite grapes, honestly, especially if you can make it dry. It gives you all those peaches and oranges. It's really delicious. We've got one from Donna Fugata called Zabibo. It's called Legea, and so it's a dry Moscato, and it's really cool because all those flavors, but it's dry, so you can drink several glasses of it. That's that. This one, of course, we still selling a lot of Moscato, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah,
Depends on the market.
Yeah. So paying a lot of bills. Chenin Blanc, really cool grape. One of my favorites. If you ever see a bottle labeled Vouvray, check it out. That is a part of the Loire Valley, and it's one of those kind of like champagne. If it has, if it says champagne on it, it has got to be these grapes from this area. If it says Vouvray on the bottle, it's got to be Chenin Blanc from the Loire Valley, right? This is another one we can do semi-sweet all the way to dry, bone dry. It's just really good, high acid, delicious. South Africa, this is the most successful grape in South Africa. So you'll see South African Chenin Blanc from our buddy Ken Forrester, from whoever else. It grows a bit differently there, but in a good way. And then we have Viognier. Who's had a Viognier?
It's good stuff.
It's delicious, right?
Delicious.
Oh yes, it is.
Viognier, they can be kind of fat. They can be bold, bigger. Really good. I also love it in the Terre d'Oro Chenin Blanc Viognier. If you guys have tried that, it's really good. It originally comes from the Northern Rhone, in France, but we have a couple that grows really well in California as well. Really floral. Then we got some Italian grape varieties we're going to learn about real quick. We've got Gavi, which is from Cortese. That's the grape. The region's called Gavi. And then we've got Trebbiano. This is grown all over Italy, right? I need everyone to say Trebbiano on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
That's right.
Trebbiano.
Trebbiano. Now we're Trebbiano experts. This one grows, it's really easy to grow. Grows everywhere on the boot. And then one of my favorite grapes, Albarino. Albarino, right?
A good one.
From Rias Baixas. Can everyone say Rias Baixas on 3? 1, 2, 3.
Rias
Rias
Baixas.
Rias Baixas, yeah. So it's another high acid. It's kind of has some saline notes sometimes. It's really good. Ah, crap, we're running out of time. We're gonna talk about rosé real quick. I think we lost Stacy. She got tired of us. So there's a couple different ways to make rosé. The most common method is a short maceration, right? So you can also combine red and white grapes. That's usually not allowed in a lot of areas. But the most common way is it's like making red wine, but you decide to only let it macerate on the skins for half a day, right? I thought I had better slides than this, but anyway, we got dry rosé, which is just fermenting it to completion. Grenache is a really good grape for that. Syrah, Pinot Noir, things with lots of really good red fruits. And then we got our sweet rosés as well. They get into the strawberries, cotton candy. Oh crap, I've got to do this too. We got 4 minutes. Okay, so why is $100 bottle different than a $5 bottle? Does anyone want to give me some guesses?
Production.
Yeah, production.
The yield that the grape produces.
Who said that? Was that Will?
Yeah.
Yeah, the yield. Any other thoughts?
Demand.
Demand, yep.
Yeah, that definitely can play a factor.
Demand for Napa grapes is a lot
Right.
more expensive.
Yeah, and I mean, land cost of where you're sourcing from.
Yep, that's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
My buddies and I did a blind tasting once, and I could taste the difference. Like, when I got this job, they kind of were like, "You won't know the difference." We did it, and I could tell, and I had no idea.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's lay them all out here. And Stacy, to catch you up, we're talking about what makes a $100 bottle of wine different than a $5 bottle. So we all had some good thoughts.
The amount of time it's aged.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So here are a couple of them right here.
All right, I don't know what's going on with my internet. Maybe I got kicked out. Okay, I'm back on my
For
phone.
example, this Behringer Private Reserve is what, 150 bucks, right? 130 bucks. Whereas this Behringer California cab is $5, right?
Right.
So that makes it different. Well, Napa Cabernet, if just by the ton, the grapes is $8,000 a ton. Central Valley Cabernet is $600 a ton, right? Because this is much more in demand. We're putting this in a new French oak barrel. That's $1,200 a barrel. We're throwing in maybe some chips, some wood chips in the $5 bottle, right?
Probably, yeah.
The Behringer Private Reserve. That's expensive. That means people have to come through and hand harvest every single vine. And sometimes we drop fruit, which means if you drop some of the fruit, the fruit that stays on the vine will be bigger, will be more concentrated, right? That's expensive. We're machine harvesting everything over here. And then market demand, someone said, right there. All make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
And the things that Artie, to your point, you can taste the oak, probably. You can taste the complexity versus this. No, nothing against this wine. It's just $5. It's just going to be like, probably thinner. It might be, it's fine, but you can taste the differences. Here's some other factors affecting cost. exchange rates. If it comes from Europe, you got to travel across the ocean, right? That's expensive. Machine harvesting is way more expensive up front, but then it's cheap if over 10 years versus hand harvesting, right? Other things that would, change what you do might be the grape variety. Maybe in Napa, you might want to grow Riesling, but no one's paying $8,000 a ton for Riesling. They're paying $8,000 a ton for Cabernet from Napa, right?
Right.
The environment, this is probably not the best place for Cab. This is probably a good place for, this looks like Riesling. All right, that's it. I don't know that we have time for the Kahoot. Do you guys want to stay? Can you guys stay on and try it?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
But know what
Give me-
happened with my computer, but let me see.
This will take 5 minutes. If you have to get off, it's no problem. I will not be offended. Let's see. All right, so just a reminder to go to kahoot.it, or there's a little QR code you can scan as well.
Give me just 1 second.
All right, that pin at kahoot.it is 973-4973. Boom, 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 boom. Is that everyone?
So
Now we got everyone. I don't know who Willy Wonka is. We'll find out.
Sorry, I had to get a laugh.
Oh, Wonka. All right, we got, I think, another 6. 7, I lied. Which of these sparkling wines uses the tank method? Champagne, Cremant, Prosecco, or Cava?
oops. I did the wrong one. It's Prosecco.
Prosecco is correct. And Bill, with the quick thumbs, only 10 points ahead of Mike. Question 2. Which of these bad boys is sweetest? Brut, extra dry sec, or demi-sec? Demi-sec, right? Semi-sweet or off dry. All right, now we got Mike on top and Josh right behind. Question 3. Unlike red wines, most white wines are pressed before fermentation. Is that true or false? That's true. We press them and then we ferment normally with white wines. All right. Ooh, things are changing in this game. I like it. Bill now is in the lead. Question 4. Winemakers love using techniques like malolactic fermentation and lees aging on this white grape. Pinot Grigio, Albarino, Sauvignon Blanc, or Chardonnay? Beautiful. Yes, Chardonnay. A lot of options. Question 5. I'm a high acid white grape, often with pronounced grassy aromatics. Pinot Grigio, Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc, or Albarino? Perfect. Ooh, almost everyone got Sauvignon Blanc. All right, Mike on top, but Josh is right behind, and Turner is on a little hot streak. Don't forget about Turner. Question 6. This grape is produced in droves in northwestern green Spain. Pinot Grigio, Garnacha, Albarino, or Viognier? Yes, it is Albarino. And Rias Baixas. Now, Josh is on top with Mike right behind. And the last question, Cortese is a great white grape of which Italian region? Gavi, Chianti, Veneto, or Sicily? It's the toughie. Spent about 10 seconds on this one. Nice, Gavi. All right, let's see the podium here. We got 3 points in third place. It's Turner. hamburger pancake. And our silver with
Baby.
7 points is Mike, which means Josh, the wizard or warlock or witch or something. Well done, everybody. All right, hold on 1 second. Let me get a
Way to go.
let's do another class photo, but I'm gonna give you guys a little more warning this time. Okay, hold on. All right, hold up. Everyone start smiling just in case. Let's see. Oh, that's better.
I'll be blinking my luck.
You totally are.
Looking good.
You said I totally am.
Little cheating.
That was miles ahead of our first one, though, I gotta say. All right, guys, that's it. Does anyone have any questions about anything?
Nah.
Pretty sure my neighbors are having their yard dug up, which is why my internet's out. So
Oh,
feel like that's why my computer cut out. And now I'm trying to like do both on my phone and it's not very successful, but that's okay.
well, hopefully that they get that figured out before 2 weeks from now. We have our next session and we'll do
Hope so.
red wines. Don't forget to 30-30 then. Your reds. And if no one has any questions, I'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
All right.
The
Thanks, guys.
following